So in this video, I'll be comparing the Canon R5, which is a 45 megapixel camera with the 24 to 70 L lens with the stabilizer. This is a f2.8, including also the Canon 70-200, which is also f2.8 with a stabilizer. So overall, the camera is about $3,000 these days. The lens, each of these lenses are about $2,000, maybe a little bit more. So overall, together, we are looking at $7,000. And as far as weight, the camera is 740 grams. The 24 to 70 is 900 grams, and this one is 1070 grams. So altogether, it's 2,700 grams, which is about 6 pounds. On the other hand, we have the Canon R10, which is kind of a mid-range crop sensor camera from Canon with 24 megapixels, and I'm gonna test it with the kit zoom lens, which is 18 to 150. Overall, this package, you can buy it when it's on sale around Thanksgiving or when they have sales, about $1,000. Outside of sales, about $1,200. As far as weight, the camera is 430 grams and the lens itself is 310 grams. So overall, the weight of the camera and the kit zoom lens is about the same as the R5 on its own. As far as advantages and disadvantages, this camera is really nice to use. It has a nice grip, so it's easy to use. The zooms really easily, so it's very pleasurable to use. I would say the biggest downside as far as using this camera is the viewfinder. So the viewfinder is a lot lower quality than compared to the R5, which makes sense because this is a $1,000 camera versus original that was like a $4,000 camera. So it's a lot smaller view and also lower resolution. But when you're on vacation with your family or just taking pictures like of your beach town, wherever you go, I found the viewfinder to be just fine. Has a flippy tilty screen, just like all the modern Canon cameras. Also, the screen is not as high of a resolution as on the R5, but that doesn't really matter. I find the screen to be completely adequate in this case. When I go shooting by myself, so when I go out to take some landscapes or when I'm shooting portraits, I always take the R5. So this is my kind of go-to camera when photography is the primary purpose of the trip. But as you can see, this camera is really heavy. And when I go on vacation with my family, it's just too much. I found it that either I wouldn't bring it at all and just use my iPhone, or even if I brought it, I would just walk around and the camera wouldn't really come out of the backpack all that much. So that's why I got this Canon R10 with the idea is that this will be my travel camera when I'm out around town or on vacations with my family. This one is really light. When I take this camera, I pretty much just take the camera and the lens. And when I want something for low light, I would bring like the 35 millimeter RF lens, which is 1.8 and stabilized. So that kind of gives me a little bit of options for portraits. But in this video, I wanted to focus mostly on this kit zoom lens. So I'll be looking at the differences between quality for landscapes at 28 millimeters equivalent, 70 millimeters equivalent, and 200 millimeters equivalent. So the R10 gets it all done with one lens. For the R5, I have to use two lenses. So the R5 with those two lenses has a range of 24 millimeters to 200 millimeters. This has a range equivalent to about 20 millimeters to about 240 millimeters. So that's the comparison. These two cameras at 3 different focal lengths. Not looking really at shallow depth of field. All of them will be shot at the f8. So here we have the images at 28 millimeters. So this is the Canon R5 image taken with the 24 to 70 at about 28 millimeters. At f8 and ISO 100, and here is the same image with the Canon R10 at 18 millimeters, so 28 millimeter equivalent, also at f8 at ISO 100. So we can compare the detail in these two images. As you can see, if you look at them full screen, you can't see obviously any difference because the screen is not high enough resolution. Here's the side-by-side comparison. We have the R5 on the left and the R10 on the right. So this is 100% pixels. So the picture on the left from the R5 is larger because that's 45 megapixels and the R10 is 24 megapixels. So you can see the per pixel sharpness on the R10 is quite good. I would say the R5, I don't know if this will translate into YouTube. The R5 per pixel sharpness is a little bit crisper. I think it's mostly due to the lenses. So there's definitely more detail even per pixel, but it's pretty close. So in the center, very close. I'll zoom in a little bit more on the R10 as well. But when we go to the corners or to the edges, see here you can see on the church steeple, this one is very crispy. This one is a little bit less sharp. And especially here in the corners, you can see the R5 is a little bit better. But honestly, it's not a huge difference. This one is a little bit softer, but I imagine it will sharpen up and you can definitely make a quite nice print out of it. So let's look at the church steeple right here, which is kind of at the edge of the frame, and zoom in a little bit more on the R10. So to get it to about the same size, I think we zoomed to only like 130%. So it's about here. And you can see it's definitely less detail. This one is crispy sharp. So if I zoom in completely here, let's go to like really high magnification. Here we have 450, and then if we zoom on here, you can see that it is not as sharp. So the R5 is clearly better, but it's a $7,000 system that weighs 6 pounds, and this one is a nice compact camera, easy to carry. So if you go into really tight details, you're gonna see better resolution. But if you print below, I would say 15-20 inches, you're probably not gonna see a huge difference between the two. Let's go back to 100%. So this is the middle, definitely more detail in the middle. But even at the edges, the 18-150 holds up quite well. There's more detail in there, but it's not a huge difference. Maybe if I had the 32 megapixel in the R7, it would be even less of a difference. I think the difference that we see mostly are due to the pixel count. But overall, fantastic performance by the cheap kit lens. Here we have the test images at equivalent of 70 millimeters. So this is the R5 image. I took it with the 24-70 because I found from my experience that when I take pictures at 70 millimeters, it's usually with the 24-70 because that's the lens I had on camera at the time. When I know I'll have to go longer, it's usually not at 70 millimeters. It's usually past that. So I think this is a pretty fair comparison, and the 70 millimeter at 70-200 is probably just as good, maybe even a little bit better. So here's the R5 image and here's the R10 image. So I got it framed pretty decently. I didn't use a tripod in this case, but it's pretty close. So again, f8, ISO 100, so the best possible quality you could get from each of these systems. So let's do side by side again. R5 on the left, R10 on the right. So let's zoom into 100%. Again, the R5 image is larger compared to the R10 because of the higher pixel count. And per pixel sharpness of the R5 is quite phenomenal. No complaints. This just shows me that I think the lenses are good enough, and I could use a high resolution full frame camera, like an 80 megapixel, if Canon would make that. On the R10, 24 megapixels, still plenty to make good quality prints. Per pixel sharpness, very good. So in the middle, great sharpness. If you go to the sides here, so here's the church steeple again, nice and crispy here, but also very good here. In the mountains in the back, you can see these are very sharp. These are a little bit less sharp, but still the amount of detail is quite impressive considering it's a budget option. It's very light. So if you zoom in again, so we can unlock this here. Let's zoom in on the R10 to make it the same size. So about right here, we can see that the R5 is clearly crisper and sharper. But if we sharpen this up, play with it in Photoshop a little bit, not a huge difference. And then last, we have the equivalent of 200 millimeters. So here we have the R5 with the 70-200 at 200 millimeters. So this is the maximum it goes. And here's the R10 at 122 millimeters, which is equivalent to about 200 millimeters. So you can see framing is quite close between the two. The colors are a little bit different. The R5 seems a little bit more greenish, but obviously that can be fixed. I shoot raw all the time. So let's compare them side by side again. Let's zoom in at 100%. The R5, again, a little bit more detail, a little bit crisper image. And I would expect the 18-150 to struggle at the low focal lengths compared to the dedicated telephoto zoom, but it's still quite sharp. Obviously not as sharp as the R5, but holding up quite well. Very impressive. So if you're a landscape photographer, yeah, definitely take your R5, but if you're just traveling for fun and for some family pics, it's gonna be fun just to take an R10 with a kit zoom. You can see here on the edges, the R5, there's pretty much no chromatic aberration. Here I can see some purple fringing, but that can be also cleaned up in post-processing. Overall, fantastic performance by the R10. I would say highly recommended for travel photography. I just looked at the sample images from the Canon R10. I would say I'm very impressed by the quality compared to the R5. So the R5 is clearly better, there's no question about it. If you're looking to shoot in low light, definitely the R5 is going to be a huge winner because the aperture range on the kit, the zoom lens is not that great. If you're looking for shallow depth of field for portraits, definitely R5 with the 70-200, much better camera. But for general travel photography, going around, it's super light. The quality is really, really good. And the main point of this test was to see if the kit lens has any obvious weak spots. Because kit lenses in the past, in early 2000s, they always were pretty soft, and if they were good in the middle, the corners were really suffered. But they really figure out how to make the cheap kit lenses really, really good, and they're quite competent. And if you look at different reviews online on YouTube, they all say that this lens is really, really good. So I would definitely recommend the 18-150 over the standard 18-45. That lens seems like a dud. This one is sharper, and just the range of the 18-45 is really limited, and I probably wouldn't recommend it to anyone. If you can't afford the 18-150, probably just stick with your phone for now or look for something on the used market. You could also argue that instead of the f2.8, I could buy the f4, so the 2.8s are really chunky and big. But the f4's lenses, so the 24-105 or 70-200 f4, are definitely smaller, but it's still going to be two lenses, and it's still going to be a lot more bulky than the crop sensor camera. I think the 18-150 for me personally, for travel photography, is the ultimate choice for now. Maybe there'll be something better in the future, but for now, that's what I'm going to be taking on vacations with my family, unless I have something very clear that I want to shoot in mind that would require a full frame camera. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.